This is the second part of our series on costing. So we are trying to basically apply costing to both manufacturing and service industry. So what did we cover last time, which we are taking it forward, right? So last time we talked about understanding multi-product. We understood how and why you should take opportunity cost into consideration. And last but not the least, we said at least you should know the basic costing which you should be able to apply right into business. But unless you know the cost of your product or service, you cannot proceed further for making a profit. Now the gentleman who is as helping them in these challenging times, a wealth of experience in Middle East and of course India. He's worked with a very large infrastructure firm, which was for 5 years, and sir took retirement about 4 to 5 years back. Why I'm saying 4 to 5 years back is this particular firm unfortunately has got into a bit of problem now, right? And I think somebody like sir could definitely have helped them understand that, given a warning signal. So I believe any trouble that comes in will not come quickly. There are signals and we need to catch those signals and then act upon it. If not acted, then it becomes a catastrophe, right? And how do you catch that signals is what is very important. For understanding those signals, we call it distress signals. You can use Altman's Z ratio, or you could use any empirical method. But one of the basic ways of doing it is to understand the costing that is applicable to your firm. Thank you again, Shekhar sir, Shekhar Joshi sir. We continue with any questions, please feel free. We would be also looking at Facebook if there are any questions. Those who are on Zoom can directly talk to sir, can ask a question here. Again, heartfelt thanks to all the participants, right? That thanks to you all, we are still continuing the series. Special thanks to Ganiji, who again has made a contribution to Hunger Collective. Rashi ma'am just called me and right, I got that news. Thank you again, Gani. I would not disclose the number because you don't like it. And thank you again, Nisha Bete. I don't know if my kid has joined. She's also made a small contribution. Yeah, Nisha also has joined, which I just came to my notice thanks to Rashi ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. I think I'm getting a message that Menon sir's bandwidth is a little low. So I think few things were not really audible. So I'm taking it over from Menon sir. Thank you very much for introducing. And I have kept my chat box open. So in case you have any problems with the audio video, as well as if you want to ask any questions, post it there and we'll take it forward from there. Now, I'm sure we have some participants from the Facebook channel also. So until everybody settles down, I'll just reiterate what Menon sir said about the last lecture. The very purpose about this particular series is to make sure that in present, or rather like what's happening for last few years, is the awareness of cost is increasing. Unfortunately, it was not so. As we cost accountants many times start with the complaint that the whole thing started with the license Raj, where manufacturers, producers, and people concerned probably had advantage or luxury of deciding the prices because the production was limited because of the licenses, and market was huge, wherein the profits were guaranteed. There were other ways of making profits, and now this like in the last couple of decades, what we have seen, that entry of multinationals, open competition, transformation of information, transfer of information, and more importantly, the market remaining only at metro cities, is not the concept now. Now, what comes with that is everything eventually impacts your profitability, your balance sheet, which indicates the health of your organization. And what we cost accountants generally try to do is that there are three factors in any financial statement. The first factor is your sales number. Second factor, I'm going in a reverse way. First factor is your sales number. Second factor, important factor, is your profit. And then what remains inside between these two is the cost. Now, these costs are not necessarily a bunch which is put into those financials, but it has a lot of information, lot of impact, and most importantly, lot of importance in deciding what Menon sir just now said, is that to pick up the signals where you're going. So what we did last time was to introduce the concepts of those costings which are relevant, which must be understood, which must be dissected, and which must be applied to the bottom line in the life of your company. Now, having said that, what we discussed last time was the general concepts of costing. More importantly, we talked about break-even point, we talked about PV ratio, and we also talked about the relationship between volume, sales volumes, your costs, and its impact on your profitability. This is what we are going to imbibe on to understand, because my personal experience is when I do the cost audit or even the other consultancy, believe me, okay, I give the discount of COVID, what has happened in the last 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 months. But even otherwise, when the businesses were normal, when things were supposed to be under control and transparent, most of the people, or rather promoters, entrepreneurs, general managers, did not know the profit that is made in the previous financial year. And this can go on up to another 3 to 4 months after closure of the year, which is not a good sign. And this is where I normally insist upon having a monthly profit and loss account, be it 90% correct, 85% correct, 98% correct. But this is where we should be focusing on, because the moment you create your profit and loss account on monthly basis, you try to find out what are the reasons that I'm not achieving. The second factor that we normally profess is the budgeting and budgetary controls. We'll be talking about it later on about it. So having understood these concepts of costing, which is volume related, the cost related, and its impact on our let's say health of the company. Now it is very essential that we try to understand the peculiarity of these costings in different industries. Now, if we go back to our concept of costing, I have mentioned yesterday, day before yesterday, that all along costing has been directly addressed to as a manufacturing concept. Now, even in the Institute of Cost Accountants was set up in 1959. Until 2011, its importance was not utilized rightly. Lots of companies, many manufacturing companies, many multinational companies, and even small companies have adopted very good costing systems, which have helped them to pick up the signals, at the same time take right decisions. But what typically was happening was everything was focused on manufacturing industries. For records, it was only in 2017 2017, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs realized that service industry is also important to be looked into. And it was in 2017 that cost audit of service sectors, service industry, to a limited extent, was introduced and reported to be reported to Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Now, these are the first two sectors or segments that we are going to discuss about. As a rule, these are the major sectors that we should be looking into. These are the two contributors where costing concept is very relevant and needs to be understood. First, we will try to see what we discussed day before yesterday on manufacturing industry. As I said, this is something which has always been a focus for costing, and believe me, I'm a cost accountant. Of course, I have MBA. But when I got a job in the Middle East, the first question that my friends and probably acquaintances, they asked me, "You're a cost accountant, what are you going to do in the Middle East?" Because in Middle East, apart from oil, there is no manufacturing, there is only trading. So what are you going to do there? It was a very interesting question, but I was amazed to see how best we can. Of course, I had to use costing as a base and then apply it to finance, apply it to administration, apply it to even certain non-costing aspects where it was eventually reflected that costing is something that we should be talking about. I mentioned yesterday about lots of projects and activities overshooting the costs. Those costs are prevailing everywhere. Now, today we are going to talk about manufacturing and service industry. So let's talk about manufacturing industry, how it is related, how the costing is related, why costing is important, and as every time we say, manufacturing industry is related to costing. Again, I repeat that this concept of profits, volumes, and costs was not really important in the license Raj, where profits were abundant, and that paved way to lots of other activities. So let's see how it is important. Now, when we talk about manufacturing industry, manufacturing is basically a tangible, it produces a tangible product. Now, I'm going to differentiate this from service industry at a later point. But when we talk about manufacturing, there are three major concepts that we should be knowing. And when we are talking about, again, manufacturing industry, we are talking about an output, a product that comes out of the activity that needs to be processed, that needs to be properly handled, that needs to be quality controlled, price controlled, cost controlled. Now, how the product is created, it starts with the material. And the material is direct material cost, which is the first cost. It's the cost of material in production, company, where iron and steel is the material, be it plastic industry, where plastic is important, be it rubber industry, where rubber is becoming a direct material cost. But it is not necessarily only one material that is used. Either it's a combination of material and chemical, or it's a combination of two materials, and this normally consists major portion of the cost of the product. Now, this direct material cost is very important from various angles from costing point of view. Now, it's not only that, you bought 1 kilo of atta and you put water in it and you made chapatis out of it, and every time 1 kilo of atta, I'm not sure, and I'm just guessing, 1 kilo of atta gives you 50 chapatis, and every time it is 49 or 51. what is important in direct material cost is how well it is defined, how well it is controlled, how well it is reported, and how well the material cost has been monitored by everybody concerned about the total cost of manufacturing. We'll talk about it later on when we have an example. The second important aspect of cost in manufacturing industry when you are producing something is the direct labor cost, right? Now, obviously, this particular aspect is not as high as it used to be because of mechanization, because of use of robots, because of use of the change in technology. However, this has remained one of the most important parts of costing concept. So whenever we are talking about production, whenever you are talking about anything that comes out of the process, which is manufactured, it has material. Again, there are different considerations and angles to be given to material cost. The second one is labor cost, which is still very prominent factor to be considered. I must mention here is in last couple of months that we have been visiting the clients, one of the major comment, it's not a complaint, in fact, it's a compliment to themselves, that my production in last 7 months, okay, let's give a discount of April, May, June, probably there was no production, no activity, etc. But I am producing almost, I'm talking about quantity, I'm almost producing the same amount of production with 60 or 65% of the labor force that I was using. And that is where it becomes important to analyze. So when we're talking about production, we are talking about manufacturing. The first one will be material. Second most important part is labor cost, which is interchanging with the technology now. And third and most important part is the direct expenses. These direct expenses are basically production related expenses. These expenses, depreciation, this could be overheads in your factory, this could be even housekeeping of your factory, this could be maintenance of your machinery, this could be utilities, this could be generator, this could be gas supply, or even a garden that is maintained in certain chemical plants. So these three aspects of cost, direct material cost, direct labor cost, and direct expenses, all costs that mentioned are directly proportionate to output. What does it mean? Is I just mentioned about atta, 1 kilo, 50 chapatis. So when we are talking about manufacturing, these are directly related to your output. If I'm using 10 kilos of steel and 1 labor and my other cost of this is the output I'm getting. So if I have to double the output, all these will have to be doubled. I mean, this is very general statement because a lot of other considerations will have to be given, but these are directly related to your output. So X material, Y labor, Z expenses multiplied by 3 will give you 3 times the production. Multiplied by 5 will give you the 5. So that's the reason these are called direct costs, and these are directly proportionate to your output that is intended. Now, what we have seen here is, and this is very important, is that raw is again coming from the inventory. Now, there is what I'm not telling you is the material cost. The material cost itself is not the cost at which I have just purchased. It has a lot of other incidental expenses, including its transportation, and most importantly, which I'm not discussing now, is inventory holding cost. How long do you hold the inventories? How the cost gets accumulated to the material? is the material that I purchased for 50 rupees per kilo is to be treated as 50 rupees per kilo, or what are the things that I should be adding to direct labor? Generally, it is as we said, y multiplied by 3 should be the requirement for 3 times the production. And factory overheads, again, I'm not I'm just explaining this as mathematics, because there are a lot of other considerations, that economies of scale and substitutes and other things. But to understand the concept, these 3 factors, raw material, direct labor, factory overhead, is generally used for production, right? Now, I must explain and I must mention here that in manufacturing, assuming that you are producing a final product in your factory, the most important concept here is whatever you produce in the current year or current period is not necessarily sold in the current year. Also, whatever you have sold in the current year is not necessarily produced in the same year. Very important concept to understand, because if you have produced something in the previous period, be it on a monthly basis, be it on a 6 monthly basis, so whatever you have produced, or if it is in the process of being produced, it is called work in progress, right? Now, there are 3 types of inventories. One is raw material, the other one is WIP, work in progress, and third is, so whatever is in the process or having produced but not sold in the close of the previous year goes in the inventory. Now, what happens is whatever is the cost of production of previous year is not necessarily going to remain as cost of production in current year. The cost of material is likely to change. The labor charges are likely to change. Again, we'll talk about the capacity and other things, its impact on the production cost. So these 3 major constituents of production, cost of production, also has to be considered from the viewpoint of what is being produced and not sold, what is being sold and not produced, and what is the impact of that in my inventory, which is divided into 3 parts. Now, finished goods is remaining in the inventory, but it does not necessarily, unless it is made to order, or what we call it as a pre-order sales, that then you have cost of goods sold. This, what we discussed about, is cost of production, but there is also cost of goods sold. This is a massively important area, because I'm sure many of you, when you're doing your estimates or when you're doing quotation, what you normally do is that selling price or whatever is the price given to you, and then you add probably 25%, 30% to that. What is that? That is nothing but cost of goods sold. There is a concept of cost of production and cost of goods sold. Now, what is cost of goods sold? Cost of goods sold, A, is basically when the production is made in the factory, it has administration cost, it has selling cost, it has marketing cost, and it has a distribution cost, right? Going backwards, distribution cost will have your transportation, your documentation. If you are exporting your customs and everything, then you have, I'm not including finance cost here at the moment, just for records. Then you go back to your administration cost, which is your accounts department, which is your purchase department, which is your administration department. Then you have rent, and that is what constitutes the cost of goods sold. We normally divide this into 3 parts, which is administration, selling and distribution, and a marketing cost. Now, the reason I've made marketing costs, we'll talk about later on, is sometimes the marketing cost is incurred for future sales. So these three concepts and how they are related to the end of product which is delivered to the customer. There are various aspects, there are various costs, and there are various impacts, relationship or interrelationship of these costs when we are talking about costs, controls, and production and its valuation from the viewpoint of costs. Right now, these costs are generally in manufacturing. Of course, it applies to service industry also. Now, these costs are normally divided from various angles, from various bases for these classifications. The first one is nature of expenses, which we saw, which is material, labor, and other overhead cost. Right? We identify just for a ballpark discussion. Material is normally about, let's say, 50% plus minus. Labor is normally about 15% plus minus, and roughly 10% is your other overheads, which are factory related overheads. So if you are categorizing the expenses into nature, these are material, labor, and other expenses. But if you're using a different category, different classification, the relation of cost to the object is, when the object is to be identified, it has direct and indirect costs. Direct costs are material, labor. Indirect costs are the costs which are not necessarily for a particular product. At the same time, it could be cost incurred for more than one products, more than one activities. For example, you have an advertisement. One advertisement can give advertisement of 5 products, so it becomes an indirect cost. If it is based on functions, there are basically few departments, which is production, admin, finance, selling, distribution, R&D, quality control, etc. So the costs can be identified by function, and then it is to be decided for application, control, and reduction. What is the classification as per the behaviors? So certain costs are fixed costs, certain costs are variable costs, and certain costs are semi-variable costs. Right? Now, fixed costs, we all know: salaries, rent, anything that has been committed on time basis, but the behavior of the cost will be fixed cost. Variable costs are normally directly related to the quantity that is produced. Then there are certain variable, semi-variable costs, and a classic example, I'm going to go a little off track here. The semi-variable cost, most of the production people must be knowing. Then when you take a electricity connection from electricity company, what they ask you is give us a minimum consumption that you will be making. In the sense that if you are taking electricity connection in an industrial area, minimum 2000 units will be charged to you. Anything above that will be charged separately. But if you consume only 1500 units, still 2000 units will be charged to you. That then it becomes a semi-variable cost. Now, technically fixed and variable costs are identified, but semi-variable costs is the point of discussion, if not contention, because we do this classification for break-even point or like in other costing analysis, it becomes very critical. At the same time, it becomes very important, because the more the fixed cost, the higher the break-even point. So semi-variable cost will have to be identified and treated accordingly. If you do the classification based on purpose of decision making, very important. I think Menon sir has mentioned that we will be talking about this at some point of time in detail. Now, for decision making, there are certain costs which are called opportunity costs. The opportunity that is lost or opportunity that you have taken. Marginal cost, which is based on your variable cost and which is again used for decision making. Then your imputed cost, very important concept, especially from cost accountant's point of view. Imputed cost is the cost that you have not incurred, but in normal circumstances you could have incurred. In the sense, I have a car, I'm manufacturing, let's say, gloves, and if I have to transport those gloves from Mumbai to Bangalore, it would cost me, let's say, 500 rupees. However, I'm going in my car, and my car, I'm alone, and I'm taking the gloves in my car to be delivered in Bangalore. Technically, I have not incurred the cost, but in normal circumstances, I should consider that as a cost. Then you have relevant cost and non-relevant cost. For example, visits of salespeople to new areas, visits of quality control doing something more than normal quality control, etc. By production process, the classification will be batch costing, process costing, operation cost, joint cost, and prime cost. Now, prime cost is nothing but what we discussed, material, labor, and overheads is a prime cost. But there is a batch costing. There are certain products where the production changes from, let's say 3-inch bar to 6-inch bar. 3-inch bar production becomes a batch. Then it's a process, something that goes in the process, like for example, elongation of wires. It's a process. Then you have to identify those costs based on the production process. Then you have to think about operation cost when the operation is going on. There is a joint cost. You might produce two products in the same operation, same process. Then you have to find out how the costs are to be divided. So based on production, this classification is done. And then time period cost, which is historical, predetermined, standard, and estimated. I'm not going to dwell upon a few things, but historical cost is normally considered for your standard costing. In the sense, what was the cost when you decide how much it's going to be standard costing for estimation? Then you go for the historical cost. Then you go for the predetermined cost. When the product is to be new or the market is to be new, then you predetermine the price that this is the limit that I'm going to decide or I'm going to spend on. And then you have estimated cost where there is no data available. The estimation is done on the basis of best judgment, or what we call it an educated guess, or whatever it is. So these are the basic costs, the types of costs which are not necessarily interchanging. They are not necessarily eliminating one another, but it depending upon what is your process of thinking, what exactly you are thinking about getting out of it. For example, new product, new market, new setup, these costs will come in different forms and shapes as cost consideration that you should be giving. Now, the next one that comes here is capacity and costs. It's very, very interesting because this is something which works both ways. You underutilize your capacity, your fixed costs remain the same, your flexible costs depending upon what percentage they are. But capacity is one of the major concerns and major application of identifying capacity, discussing capacity, utilizing capacity in deciding what the costs will be. For example, a taxi carrying 4 passengers will have costs divided by 4, but if it is carrying 2 passengers, obviously the cost per person will be higher. The capacity is an amount that something is, it can be produced. It's a number. In manufacturing terms, capacity refers to maximum output of production. I will show that by example. Capacity is the key metric to assess viability of running the operation. Again, I have an example over there. Then capacity utilization is normally considered to be 100% in making decisions. However, there are certain realities that we have to face with. Now, what are these realities? The capacities are installed capacity, normal capacity, actual capacity, and practical or achievable capacity. I will quickly go through this. Installed capacity is the capacity as per the manufacturer's specifications. He says that this machine is going to produce 100 units per hour. Let's take it 100 units per hour. Very interestingly, it depends upon 1 hour of working. Now, what is normal capacity? What is normal capacity is that your production unit is close to residential area. So your normal capacity will be 100 into 8, right? 100 into 8 will be 800 will be a normal capacity. Installed capacity, I'll repeat, is 100 units per hour. Actually, you can run it for 12 hours. You can run it for 16 hours. But the actual normal capacity that you have is 8 hours because your shift is 8 hours. So you're talking about 800 units. Now 800 units per day, and then actual capacity will not be 800 units multiplied by 7 because Sunday is a holiday. So 800 into 6 will be your actual capacity. Now practicable capacity, it is divided into 2 parts. Practical capacity has impact on availability of other factors. For example, let's assume every day or maybe every Thursday that you're working, there is no electricity between 2 and 4. So I have to deduct those 2 hours. Secondly, maybe every Friday, the truck does not come for delivery to pick up the delivery. So you don't produce. So considering these factors, even if you have installed capacity of 1200 units per day, of course, I'm not discussing other factors like what is the downtime for change of production, downtime because of servicing, downtime. Just to understand the concept that installed capacity is always higher, normal capacity is that. Actual and practical capacity will depend upon lots of other factors that you have to take into account. Now, this is what financially impacts from costing point of view. You run at 60% capacity and your sales is 600 units at 60 units at 10 rupees per, whereas variable cost is changing as per the units produced. What is important and interesting here is that your fixed costs of 340 rupees is remaining the same throughout because you have projected your costs based on 100% capacity. But when you have installed capacity of 100, but you're producing only 60, you're making loss. Even at 80%, you're making loss. What is important here to make profit, I'm not saying 100% because there is something in between these two, which is a break-even point. Now, this is the reason why capacity utilization remains more important. At the same time, capacity identification, capacity discussion, and making use of that spare capacity becomes very important, where marginal costing also plays a part. Sorry. So capacity understanding, capacity utilization, and simultaneously using your break-even point and your marginal costing will be converting your operation into profit. And that's the reason capacity becomes very, very important to understand what capacity you have. I mean, typically you might have seen Very interesting. When you go outside metro cities or probably small places, you have auto rickshaw, or what they typically call it as those bigger rickshaws. There is a specific name which I don't want to see on media. Is like, you know, the auto rickshaw will never take 3 passengers. He will take 5. The small tempos, even if the capacity is 30 people, or let's say 10 people tempo, he will normally make it a point that he is taking at least 4 to 5 passengers more, because of course it is not advisable, because it affects your maintenance. But he is thinking short term. He is utilizing his capacity more than 100% to make short term gains. And this is where he understands his capacity. At the same time, he doesn't understand the impact of short term gains from the long term gains. So important, as I said, understanding the costs from various parameters and its impact on capacity, which is very important, right? Again, in this one, what I have not included is the break-even point and marginal costing. Now, again, which I mentioned earlier, there is job costing. You take a job. I think most of the jobbers will be knowing. You take a job and what is the costing. Again, it's slightly difficult, because again it will be dependent upon. For example, you have a capacity of doing 10 jobs in a day, but you're doing only 1. Your costing will have to be done. But concepts to understand from costing point of view is, there is a job costing, there is a standard costing. Standard costing is the methodology employed by manufacturing operations, very commonly used. The organization establishes standard rates. It could be rate for labor per hour. It could be standard cost of depreciation to be charged per hour, depending upon what is the capacity you're talking about, what is the rates you're talking about. So there is a job costing, standard costing for estimating your cost, process costing. As I mentioned, there is a continuous process, but in the process, whatever is produced, what are the costs allocated, what are the costs incurred, what are the imputed costs, depending on that, process costing will be done. Activity-based costing, it's very important, and it's taking very high prominence discussions these days. This incorporates more indirect costs into direct production activities. See, you have to identify the activity. You have to identify the costs related to that. Many times this is further analyzed from benefit of the cost. But again, this could be slightly close to job costing, but activity-based costing is normally related to what are the advantages that you're taking. This is a typical, I don't know if you guys can see this, but this is a typical cost sheet for a manufacturing company, where there is a material cost which is collected from the stores that is issued. Then there are cost of direct employees, direct expenses. You are using spares. There is a repairs and maintenance, as I mentioned. It could be standard maintenance, timely maintenance, breakdown maintenance. So all these costs are taken into account, from material to employee to quality control to research, and every cost is directly related to manufacturing. Now, somebody will ask me quality control or R&D. Many times R&D cost is taken out of costing equation, and it is charged separately, treated separately. And that particular cost, at some point of time, when the product is launched, it's charged to that new product. Again, it's a different way of thinking, different way of understanding the cost, and different way of apportioning and recovering the cost. So these are the costs for standard production. Then we have costing, then we have cost called packing cost. Now, packing costs are of 2 types to be taken into account. One is called primary packing. Second cost is secondary packing. If we see the toothpaste cannot be sold by itself. It has to be in the Tetra Pak. So that Tetra Pak, for a toothpaste becomes a primary packing, whereas it is also packed in a cardboard box, which is a secondary packing, because secondary packing sometimes it's not, because what I don't know if you have heard this, just out of it's a trivia that like there are certain toothpaste companies that they're trying to sell the toothpaste without the cardboard box by reducing the price. Anyway, this is typical cost sheet that can be understood, which takes into account the material, labor, direct cost, indirect cost, direct in the sense utilities, etc., indirect in the sense your quality control, your depreciation, production overheads. Then you talk about, like, the reason I have mentioned here of increase and decrease in work in progress is whatever is produced this year, not necessarily sold in this year. Whatever is sold is this year is not. So that is indicated and picked up by working, stock adjustment entries or opening stock, closing stock entries. Then this is, you have cost of production. Then you have administrative cost, secondary packing, we have just mentioned, selling and distribution. So starting from material, it will give you the total cost that is collected from all the activities. And then you deduct it from your selling price, which gives you the margin as per the cost accountants. The reason I mentioned earlier is I'm not mentioning the finance cost, because finance cost is at the moment, to a certain extent, is not considered as cost. Because if there is a company which has borrowed money, and if there is a company which has not borrowed the money, the costs will be substantially different. However, many times now it is a practice that the finance cost is mentioned at the bottom after the total cost or total profit has been calculated. This is something that we should remember, right? Else you want me to see something very specific? As I mentioned, cost accountants were considered to be the accountants of manufacturing company. 2017, MCA, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, realized that service industry is also important, and the costing of service industry is to be done methodically. Now, what are the things generally that we should be knowing about service industry? And that's what I have covered here. There is a specific chapter to understand the costing, the cost controls, the decision-making methods for service industry, which probably we'll do it some other time. But we also know that, just for trivial information, the service industry constitutes major portion of our GDP now. Now, that media is major portion, but we are not talking about it. But why service industry is to be treated separately? I mean, there are certain peculiarities of service industry. There are certain angles from which service industry is to be looked into from a completely different angle. Now, as I mentioned, in manufacturing costs, there is a tangible object that can be identified, that this is the fan, this has taken 2 kilos of steel, this has wires, and this is a fan which is costing 800 rupees for me. So this is a tangible object that has been done. Now, in service industry, which is not really tangible to a large extent, which I'll explain later on, but it's a product which is completely intangible. Then eliminating the core cost element, for example, there is no material cost, there is no direct labor related to processing that material, etc. It's not there. And the ultimate in case of service industry from costing perspective is asserting the total operational cost, right? We are talking about the operation. Now, again, we're talking only about the cost, because masala dosa served in a small restaurant is costing you, now it is very expensive, is costing you 80 rupees. The same masala dosa is costing the same, but sold at a different price. So what we are trying to understand here is the cost of that intangible service that is being provided, right? For example, when we are talking about hotels, we normally find out what is a room rate, but how's the room rate fixed? Again, I will go back to certain basic points I mentioned about the capacity. I mean, I have 100-bed hotel, but how many of that? I mean, what is the fees cost? I have to maintain, I have to clean, I have to run the air conditioner, I have to So depending upon that, the bed nights available and bed night occupied. Available about 100 and occupied are probably 50. So again, that will have to be worked out judiciously and intelligently to find out that you're not making losses. In school, it's a very, I was involved in some costing of these kind of activities. It is very interesting. For example, I'll give you something very shortly. You have a class. The class is for 20 students, and the classroom rent is 20,000 rupees. Right? Now, if the same classroom can have 8 classes of 1 hour each, they can have 16 classes of 1 hour each, or can be like only for Saturday and Sunday. So this is where the cost unit becomes difficult to define, right? The unit is defined, but costing of the same becomes slightly difficult. Hospitals, again, hospitals cannot stop certain operations if the certain facilities if the bed is not occupied. So they have to do the costing. They have to find out how the costing is done. Accounting firms, I can talk about it being accountant, but how do you charge per hour to your clients? Then again, last point about service industry is the transport of passengers per kilometer. It's always different for government and private, but again, there are lots of other factors. The only idea was to explain the cost unit that is to be considered. And when we consider cost unit in each of these, we have to consider that the capacity utilization of the same has been considered in collecting and allocation of the costs, right? Peculiarities, I will, what happens in service industry, I'll go a little fast here, is a service industry, it becomes very vulnerable when the market goes up and down to a large, with big variations. They have to have installed capacities. I always used to ask some of my friends who are hoteliers, when you go to bed in the night, how do you project that how many upmas you are going to make next day and how many vegetable biryanis you are planning to do next day? Of course, there are ways of doing it, but what is the installed capacity? I mean, how many, suppose you have 100 customers coming in and all of them one day want to eat upma. So how do you have these installed capacities? So service industry has to think in-house installed capacity. At the same time, if it is a general product, we have seen this, if it is a general product, it can be outsourced. If it is a specialized product, it has to have a decision to be made on that. Skills. There are, this specifically goes to hospitals, doctors, and where specialty of, typically lawyers, right? So how many clients a lawyer can handle or attend in a day? But again, going back to the general product, what is the quality control you are talking about? This is where the lawyer hands over his certain activities to junior lawyers. Then in-house, what is the specialty? Take an example. A South Indian restaurant specialized only for Mysore masala, that becomes a specialty. Then he cannot ask his neighboring restaurant to cater to Mysore masala when there is an excess demand. If he does that, by sharing the recipe, there is a risk of losing the business. Then classically, when the volumes are likely to go up, as I said, like there is a festive season, there is suddenly some activity going on. What is the time required for training those people as cook, as waiters, as ushers, or whatever? What is the skill development required? Is it short term? Is it long term? And what competition is doing? Is competition is also involved, or are you doing it jointly with them to share the risk of training cost involved? It will depend. I mean, this is the peculiarity. Then, most importantly, the quality. The quality has to be maintained through and through. If you are a lawyer, if you are a doctor, if you are a restaurateur, if you are a courier company, the quality will have to be maintained, and either it has to be in-house, or if you are outsourced, it should be consistently maintained in the quality that in-house services can provide. These are the things you'll have to consider when you're thinking about the costs of service industry. Now, I might take a bit skip here, right? Service industry is, as a whole, operates at a competitive price points and margin. This is something very, very important, which I will cover later on. But these last 3 points I want to emphasize on is, even in service industry, the accurate cost allocation is very important. I will mention this later on. Identifying operational bottlenecks, which is another important thing that you have to find out, that you develop a capacity of having 10 couriers in one suburb. But if you have only one clerk who to attend to those 10, 15 couriers, then that becomes a bottleneck. So impact of that bottleneck on your capacities will be very important. And lastly, maximize of operating profit. Make sure everything is smooth. Operating profit, which is the gross profit, and then it is deducted for your net profit. Maximization on operating profit, because your administrative cost becomes a controllable cost, and maximizing operating profit is something which you can do either by increasing the operation or by increasing the sales value. Again, we'll touch upon that if we get time. These are the peculiarities of service industry, and it's very, very important. I'm going to go to the second point first, because it is always perceived, it is always assumed that service industry has very high returns. Now, we will divide this into two parts. One is real high returns, which is, again, let's take lawyers, let's take high-end hotels, let's take medical profession, which is not a big hospital where the considerations are different. But there is a perceived notion that all the service industries have high returns, and this is perceived mainly because what you see visibly is not the cost. What is visible is the return, that how much they are charging it to you. Then another peculiarity is interchangeability. For example, classic example, you will see a lot of insurance agents, insurance advisors changing the jobs easily. Interchangeability is very high because the basic skill set is more or less the same. what they have to do is they have to change the facade, right? And then it becomes LIC agent selling Tata AI, right? So interchangeability in service industry is easy. Then typically service skills and risk related costs are very low, and at the same time they are very high. I was talking to somebody, there is a Mona Lisa picture. Somebody draws Mona Lisa picture. The original is always expensive. But when you ask somebody else to do it, the risk of Mona Lisa not laughing is very high. So the risk is very high. The skills and returns, this again divided into two parts: high profitability, low profitability. But you will realize that when the business is good, you will see a lot of service industry outlets mushrooming. When business starts little bit sign of slowing down, these are the first people to run away. Another classic example here is share brokers, right? They live on volumes. The moment volume goes down to their break even, it's very difficult for them to survive. In service industry, different unique selling points are identified: location of the industry or outlet, location of the tributary that is coming to you, the sales people, the decoration of your showroom. Everything is different for different industry and different USPs. Then hijacking of ideas and skill are very, very easy. I don't think I'll have to explain that. Then it also has disruption costs, right, which are very high. You must have realized in the COVID, manufacturing companies, though slowly, have started very well and caught up with their speed. However, the hotels, the low-cost service centers are still struggling to open despite their low cost. So these are the peculiarities that we have. I'm going to very quickly touch upon courier service, and we always see that, and all the points that I have mentioned are applicable to courier service. They can share the cost, they can share the office, they can share the vehicles. For example, I don't know if you, but DHL many times carries couriers for other courier companies also. So what are the costs in courier services? The capital cost, which we don't see, are vehicles, warehouses. I'm talking about courier in general, which also not necessarily the papers, but also other objects. They also need very high, highly technical computers and IT system, which is a very big investment. Then it has a technology cost, right? Disruption costs and technology costs. They need to train the people to know the operations and operators. Then what are the semi-fixed costs that they have? Is administration cost. The admin staff has to be trained properly, because one small mistake, right? One small mistake. Let's take an example of share broking firm. Operator, instead of buy, he punches sell, and then you're ruined for the life, right? Other cost, most of the service courier service offices, you will see they are rented, and rent is very high. Again, the rents offices are normally in a crowded area where the rents are very high. A courier company cannot be in isolation. Utilities are very high. Courier services normally work long hours. Air conditioning is required. Security is required. They also have minimum number of couriers, gophers. People who are like messengers. They have to be taken care of. They have to be paid minimum. The salaries are normally flexible and fixed and variable, depending upon where you are. Variable costs are fuel. There is something else that I wanted to add but I have left it because of COVID, which is the bonuses given for couriers and the staff concerned. So these are the basic costs of courier service. What are the costings that are the costings from costing point of view? Rent, courier office rent is generally very high. Their salaries are generally very low. Their cost of utilities, as I mentioned, because they run longer hours, they are very high. Travel allowance for personnel, this is very peculiar, is mainly because there are certain areas where the couriers collected are less, or probably there is only one courier, but you cannot say that you are 10 kilometers away from my office, I'll charge you 20 rupees plus 10 rupees for extra mileage, etc. So travel allowances for personnel are very high. Administrative salaries, as we mentioned earlier, so is the fuel cost. And cost of packing material used for delivery safety essential. This has become slightly relevant in the COVID area, where COVID era, where couriers are responsible, apart from the manufacturer or people you have bought from, to make sure that your packing is A, B, C, D. And this has become, though it is a secondary packing, it has become a very important cost to be carried out, because there are lots of restrictions on courier service. So these are the costs which are related to courier services. Let's think about it from the viewpoint of, if you see a courier service office in our area, just try to find out how many couriers it handles, what are the total costs, and how much do they really end up with, and then you take into account the disruption that they have to go through, right? Typically, there are many service industries, major being generally looked into our hospitals, healthcare industry, hotels with very high-end hotels, aggregators. This is another service provider that has come into being. Again, we may get some time to talk about it some other time. Financial services, which is insurance, which is share broking, hospitality in general, which is travel agents and those booking that I'm talking about. Another service industry that is taking very big prominence is e-commerce and social media. Social media is another subject that we'll be touching upon at some point of time. Quickly, before we close, we talked about manufacturing, we talked about service industry, we talked about peculiarities. What are the differences that we should be identifying? The reason is that now the industries are separating the service from them. For example, a truck manufacturer or bus manufacturer, and it was done by Tata's initially, they don't provide bus service for their own staff, right? So they separate the activity for various reasons. What are the differences? Service is intangible, manufacturing is tangible. Service is working capital requirement is very high. In manufacturing, capital investment is very high. The machinery, the labor, and other things. Technology in service comparatively very expensive, whereas in manufacturing, machine skills are more important. In service, direct costs, if we treat them in the direct indirect costs, the direct costs which are directly related to products are very high. Service industry has to go for quick upgradations. This was experienced by the airline industry when computerization came into being. Service needs high infrastructure. The manufacturing normally has capex is more than infrastructure, because they pass it on to service industry. In service industry, normally is customer specific costs, and in manufacturing, they are product specific. In service industry, from finance point of view, cash flow is very important. Rolling of money is very important. And in manufacturing industries, consideration of investors coming in, because manufacturing starts repaying or giving you returns after a specific period of time. This is very important to understand why these two are important, because you can identify these activities in your own organization. Try to separate them because they both have different characteristics, they both have different requirements, and they both have different deliverables. Having seen this, this was something which we wanted to talk about. Considering these both are important, the third thing that I did not cover here, or we will not be covering, is another activity, which is trading and costs related to trading. It's something important and something that we should be talking about and thinking about in future. So thank you very much. Any questions and answers? I'm good to take.
Any questions at this stage, please? Dear colleagues, this is part two that we have just taken up to summarize what respected sir just mentioned. Whether it's a service industry or whether it's a manufacturing industry, I think we need to understand that, of course, manufacturing, there'll be capex involved. Services, it may not be involved. Having said that, please also consider one very important thing, that there is something which is called as the mode factor, right? Which we are not talking about in this session, but typically a manufacturing setup is difficult to replicate immediately. Thank you again, Shekhar sir. Absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Anybody has any questions, you can write to me through Menon sir. I'll be happy to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mehul Bete. Thank you very much. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.